What's up, Space Cadets?
This is the
Next Gen Revolution Podcast.
And welcome to the motherfucking future.
That was perfect said.
Welcome to the Next Gen Revolution Podcast. We're happy to have you on.
Excellent. Well, I'm delighted to be on.
Bruce Tulgan is an internationally recognized leading expert on the best practices of effective management. He's changing the young people's lives in the workplace. He's a best-selling author and advisor to business leaders all over the world and sought-out keynote speaker and management trainer. So that's a great bio, but can you give the community, the fans, a little bit like more personal bio about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so for 27 years, we've been doing research on the front lines of the workplace. And what we do is we do in-depth interviews. So back in the early 90s, I was an unhappy lawyer at number 2 Wall Street. And I started interviewing young people. And my first batch of interviews came out in a book called Managing Generation X. And some people will recall that book because even, a lot of people bought it. I don't know if anyone read it, but there were a lot of news stories about that book. For a long time, there were more news stories about that book than the number of books that had been sold. So we've been doing research on the front lines of the workplace now for 27 years. We interview people. We ask them, how are you being managed? How does that affect your ability to perform? How do you want to be managed? Tell us about your best boss. Tell us about your bosses who were not so good. Mm-hmm. Why do you go work one place as opposed to another? Why do you leave? No, really, why do you leave, right?
Exactly. Why are you getting out of here? It's got to be something.
And then we keep talking with people as long as they're willing to keep talking to us. So some of our interviews last a couple of hours, but thousands of our interviews have been going on 10 years or longer, believe it or not. And so everything we do is based on these ongoing in-depth interviews. I mean, I'll get emails from people I haven't spoken with in years, and they'll give me updates, and I'll refresh the interview and add it to the pool. And so based on all this data, I write books about the workplace, and we do training and consulting based on all that. And that's it. We're here in Whitneyville, Connecticut, just over the border from New Haven, right down the street from Yale. And we've been here for a long time.
That's incredible to hear. And so for our series, we're doing this short-term growth series where we get guests on and explain a little bit about the struggles they've gone through, especially when we're talking about you didn't feel fulfilled as being a lawyer. And we're going to dive deep into that and to also help our generation learn more about managing, their own business, managing themselves, being, happy at the workplace, stuff that you were talking about. So let's dive deep into what you were saying about why you didn't feel fulfilled as a lawyer and why you wanted to move towards something else.
Yeah, so now don't get me wrong. I worked as a lawyer for 428 days. So it's not like I didn't stick it out for a little while.
That's a long time.
And, technically I'm still admitted to the bar in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the state of New York after all these years. But, I went to law school after college because my parents were insistent that I should get a graduate degree. And so I thought, well, law school, listen, I would have gone to medical school, except in the 6th grade, I threw up while we were dissecting a frog. And so my dad was like, well, you're not going to be a doctor. And so I went to law school instead. And then, I find the law really interesting. But I did not find what lawyers do with the law to be so interesting. And, I realize in retrospect, I could have made it more my own. But, I also wasn't crazy about living in New York City. And
really?
Yeah, I mean, we lived there for 5 years. I grew up in a small town in Western Massachusetts. And My wife and I both went to college in a relatively small town. We went to Amherst College in Amherst, Massachusetts. And then, actually my wife said, we got to go to New York. I can't go anywhere else, only New York. And so we were in New York for, about 45 minutes. And she said, I think I'm going to go to graduate school at Yale. So I was like, yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So then, here I am in law school in New York, and pretty quickly she was, after the first year, she was taking the train up to New Haven, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then coming back to New York on the weekends. And she loved it. She had a pied-à-terre in New York for the weekends, but I was there like every day. And New York made me grumpy,
Oh my God, really? Is it 'cause of people?
It's, you go outside, it's like you're still inside. You go inside,
I feel
look, I love New York City, but I didn't like living there.
Actually, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I love it too, but only when I visit. I haven't lived in the city ever, so.
Yeah, we lived there for 5 years, and then we came up to New Haven permanently. But my wife had a room up here the whole time, and so we would, I would try to escape the city and come up to New Haven. And New Haven's a city of 125,000 people. Yale University is at the heart of it. There's restaurants, theater, libraries.
Oh, you were in heaven.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically all the stuff that you might love about New York, except in a smaller place. And it was just more my speed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a cosmopolitan kind of guy, I guess.
I guess. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So then when was the moment when you were like, I'm done with law and I'm just going to jump into what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, so I was working at this law firm, and I was working on a side project, interviewing young people. I was young then, I was 27. And so what happened is, I was talking with one of the senior partners at the law firm, and he was saying, wow, all you young lawyers are a bunch of slackers. You're disloyal. You have short attention spans. You don't want to work as hard. You demand immediate gratification. You want everything your own way, and you want it right now. And I was like, well, gee, Kim went to Georgetown, Bob went to Harvard, I went to NYU, Ray went to Columbia. I mean, is slacker really the word you're looking for here?
I don't know about that.
and
Prestigious places.
Yeah, and I said to him, if you only knew what the young lawyers were whispering about over lunch. And then he got really interested, and he was like, tell me. And then I thought, And so I started interviewing people that day, and I was going to write an article called What Your Young Employees Are Whispering About Over Lunch. And that book turned into Managing Generation X. And then when that book came out, I mean, it was like exactly the right thing at the right time. It came out the same week that Generation X was on the cover of Time magazine. And my book was about, Generation Xers aren't slackers. We're just misunderstood. We're strange visitors from another planet who came to the workplace with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal workers, right? We're going to change the course of mighty bureaucracies, bend dress codes in our bare hands, right? And we're just disguised as a bunch of slackers fighting a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and flexible Thursdays, right? And
that's all we want.
Yeah. And, and then like NPR calls, and the New York Times calls, and all of a sudden there was one AP Wire story. Okay. And back in the old days, there was this thing called the AP Wire. It probably still exists, but at that time it was like the internet, because it was the early 90s. So, and Al Gore hadn't fully invented the internet yet. And so I'm just kidding. And so this little Wire story comes out, maybe 500 words about my book, and it ran in like 800 newspapers.
800 newspapers?
Yeah. And all of a sudden, everybody started calling and saying, hey, could you come speak at our meeting about young people? And I'd be like, well, I'm a young people, right?
Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And so the first call I got was from GE, right? And so Jack Welch was this very famous CEO who ran GE for 20 years. And so they called up and said, hey, could you come speak to Mr. Welch's leadership team? And I was like, you mean Jack Welch?
Like, no, are you talking about me? Yeah. What?
Yeah. And they were like, what's your fee? And I was like, wait, what?
That must have been a huge moment of like, no way, I can get paid to do this.
Yeah. And I was amazed. And to this day, my father says it's amazing that I have managed to create a career where people sit quietly and politely and listen to me talk.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, were you very nervous the first like speaking gig? Were you like, what am I doing here? How am I supposed to do this? Or
yeah, I mean, to tell you the God's honest truth, it was a disaster. So I had written a book and I had spoken in public some, like I had spoken at rallies when I was a kid, and people, were and I had taught a lot of karate, so I could be like, line up, itch, on sheet, whatever. But so I go to Crotonville in where the GE Learning Center is, and there's like 300 people there from the GE audit program. This was the first like keynote style thing I was asked to do. And, because Mr. Welch was really into my book, he was really into my message, but man, I don't know if you've ever been there, but they call it the pit because it's an auditorium. The stage is at the bottom. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Pit. And I get up there and, and I had all these notes, but I hadn't like rehearsed a speech, and, I was supposed to be there for 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah. And I do that every day now, or not every day, every other day, once a week.
Well, yeah.
3 times a week. I've given 2,000 presentations since then, but I get up there. Okay. And I was like, hi, I'm Bruce. I wrote this book. And I made some joke about the baby boomers. Like, would y'all like to have your group hug? And
oh my gosh.
Cracked up. They all cracked up. Right. And so I was like, this is going great. And then I was like, and then I started looking at my notes and I was like, this is no help. And then I started pacing around.
I don't even know how you handled that. Like, what did you do? Did you get to a point where you were like, I got to get off?
Well, had I died on stage, it would have been a more successful speech. I mean, it wouldn't have been good for me, but it would have been more interesting for everyone. Had I vomited on them, they would have enjoyed it more. They would have had to clean up, but they would have been like, wow, what a story. Whereas instead it was like, what the heck was that? And get this, after about 20 minutes, this is true. And I don't tell this story very much. I got to tell you, as you can imagine, I don't tell this story very much. So after about 20 minutes, the guy who was in charge stands up and says, why don't we take a break? And because they were heckling me by that point, because I wasn't just standing there not saying anything. I was blathering on about, I don't know what, it was not pretty. And so I was there with two guys who were working for me, with me, whatever. And they were like, what do you want to do? And I said, let's get out of here. And it's really true. And so we split. Like, they went into the other room. There were hundreds of people and they're having a reception, and we ran away. We got in the car and drove away.
Like, where did you go?
So embarrassing. And so then, of course, we had to call and apologize, and then we did it again. Amazingly, they let me do it again. And in between those, the first one and the second one, I developed an act, and I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And then I went back, and it must have been like, what, huh? But
Same person.
so, and since then I have, believe it or not, I've made a living doing this ever since then.
No, but that's
So
a great
odd.
example of like you failed to become successful. Like you went out there, tried it. It's pretty scary public speaking, and then like you literally 20 minutes in got the whole thing stopped, and then you went back and were like, you know what, I need to improve my act, improve my speaking, and now you went back there and killed the second one, and now you do it for a living. Because I think most people get afraid of like, oh, I'm not good at public speaking. Like no one is at first if they've never done it. Oh, I'm not good at math. Well, no one is at first if you've never done it. Go out there, try it, learn from your mistakes, and eventually you'll succeed.
Yeah, I mean, it was 26 years ago that happened, and and I'm pleased to say, thereafter, it turned out I was pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I tell people when they tell me they're afraid to speak in public, what I always tell people is, don't wing it. Rehearse, memorize, and learn a script, and then the more you do it, you start to improvise. So what would happen, like over the first like 100 or 200 presentations I did, because the book was big, so everybody was inviting me, the Army, the YMCA, I mean, like nobody was inviting me who were small companies. They were all, Anheuser-Busch. They were old-fashioned companies with a bunch of grown-ups who were scared of the young people.
Yeah. They didn't know how to handle the new generation. They thought they were all like lazy or tired. What is your thoughts on the like millennial generation, our generation, as we would call it, the next generation?
Yeah, well, so I wrote a book about the millennials. It's called Not Everyone Gets a Trophy. But that book is now got some, that book's been out for quite a while. And, my view is, so if the Census Bureau ends Generation X at 1977 as the last birth year. So we look at the millennials as those born 1978 to 96. And even in that time frame, there's two waves, right? There's the first wave millennials and the second wave millennials. Those born after 1996, I call them Generation Z. A lot of people are calling them Generation Z. And they're like millennials on fast forward, on steroids with, but like the way I look at it is it's, think about it. They've grown up in the 2000s, right? So there's fear of environmental collapse, economic turmoil. The United States has been at war for, almost 20 years. Right. Now this pandemic. So, I always say like the Gen Zers are more like children of the 1930s. If children of the 1930s had grown up while learning how to think, learn, and communicate attached to a handheld supercomputer, and if they were raised by helicopter parents on steroids.
That's perfectly said. Yeah, it's wild because we have information at the palm of our hands. And so like, it's just, what do we do with that? And here we are now where we live in a society where people can literally get whatever they want in a second. And I might have forgotten the hard part of life that was like, just even 100 years ago. It's like, life wasn't always this easy, especially depends where you live in the world. But like, yeah, life is a little different. It's a little so, I mean, where do we go from there?
You're connected to everyone and everything, right? So, you can be in a cocoon of safety, but you're plugged into the world, to people, to information, to reality all over the world, with no boundaries. It's really an amazing, it's not like the invention of the car. Right?
Yeah.
And the invention of the car was transformation, but I think it's far beyond that. When I was a kid, Gen Xers, right? We had no interesting inventions. We had the microwave and MTV.
Oh no, not MTV.
Continuous videos.
Exactly, but you guys have young people today. They're plugged into this, it's globalization and technology. are driving a world with institutions in a state of constant flux, individuals constantly scrambling to take care of themselves and their families, an information tidal wave where there's more information produced in a day than all of us working together could master in a lifetime. Technology that's more and more complex, but easier and easier to use. The pace of change accelerating constantly. And, you know, imagine graduating from school in this environment in the midst of this pandemic. It's just insane, right? And the pressure. And, you know, the good news is if you have STEM skills, if science, technology, engineering, and math, if you have STEM skills, STEM training, the demand for your time and energy will outpace the supply for the foreseeable future. So young people, you know, with that kind of training have huge opportunities. But it's also the case that, you know, the world is uncertain.
Now I'm curious, for STEM people, do you think they all need to go to school nowadays? Because I know it's a thing where it's like, if you're in STEM, go get a degree. It's like the only like one you should go get a degree for. But like there's so much information now online, and I've taken classes at school, and some of them aren't as good as the $10 courses I've bought. So it's just like, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, technology is becoming, you know, is changing so quickly, and technical skills become obsolete, right? So if your strategic advantage comes from your technical skill, then you've got to keep learning new technical skills faster than they become obsolete, right? So, so I hear what you're saying. Look, you know, there's some fields, if you're going to be a nurse, right? You have to go get that. If you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be an engineer, you know, if you're going to build my bridge, sorry, man, you got to be a civil engineer, you know. But there's a lot of work that, look, even if you get that degree, you're going to have to keep learning.
That's the thing.
Yeah, and if you don't get that degree, there's a lot you can learn. And even if you get that degree, there's a lot of non-technical knowledge and skill and wisdom that you have to master also.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn nowadays. And so with your experience with the Gen Z, how does someone build a discipline to stay focused on one thing and not get distracted by the internet?
I mean, look, my advice is build marketable skills faster than they become obsolete, but also build broad transferable skills that will make you valuable anywhere you go and will never become obsolete. So, you know, if I were to render legal advice to you right now, right, that's the closest I have to a technical skill, that and karate probably, right? But you know, karate doesn't become obsolete though. But,
Cobra Kai never dies.
Absolutely.
but you know, so if I were to render legal advice to you right now, it would be malpractice because A, I'm rusty, and B, there's a very good chance that a lot of the law has changed. So I would have to really brush up on my technical skills. Now, for engineers or software programmers or biomedical engineers or whatever it is, you know, anything that the more technical it is, the more likely it is to become obsolete. And so the more you have to keep building your technical skills faster than they become obsolete. But you know, when I give people advice, what I tell them is, so I'm not an expert on you know, the continuing education you need to do to keep your technical skills sharp. But bear in mind, you got to keep them sharp. But what I always tell people is, you know, there's so much you can learn that will never become obsolete. So you can get really good at self-evaluation against an objective standard, right? So that you find an objective standard and get really good at measuring yourself so that you know if you're getting better. Taking personal responsibility, showing up with a good attitude, having good work habits, you know, show up early, stay late, dot your I's, cross your T's, take notes, use checklists, taking good care of yourself, interacting with other people in a way that's respectful and interesting, right? Learning good foundational skills, getting good at mastering repeatable solutions to problems that come up a lot, getting good at making decisions when it's a new problem, being a good team player, learning how to appreciate context, having a service mindset, being a good citizen of whatever organization or team you're a part of. Those things never become obsolete. And, you know, people get hired because of their technical skills. They get fired because of their lack of non-technical skills. So,
Wow.
you know, so that's what I always tell people. And the other piece is build relationships with people based on what you have to offer them, right? Don't approach relationships in terms of what you want or need from someone else. Approach relationships in terms of what you offer them. And that's the kind of advice I give people, because, you know, it's like take a walk every day and eat your vegetables. That's never going to become obsolete.
I agree 100%. It's just the things that like should be common sense. You should just do it to be a good citizen, a good employee, and good worker. So I love that, because it's like, especially with like responsibility. I feel like a lot of people try to take responsibility and say, oh, it was someone else or something else that caused this. And it's like, really, it's honestly just you. Like, forget any politics type of thing. It's just take personal responsibility of your life, your surroundings. And if you can take care of yourself, then and the person next to you takes care of themselves, and the whole world does that, then the whole world will be okay. There's no need to save the world. Save your space. Do the best you can do. And maybe other people will follow you. Maybe the whole world can follow, and then we can all be in a better place. I think that's why personal responsibility is so important.
So I have a question. So we talked about the Generation Z. And one thing I've observed is a attention deficit. You know, everything's trying to get their attention. And so they have a lack of concentration skills. What is one thing you would recommend to them to build that concentration skill? And yeah.
Yeah, that's a powerful observation. And I think it's a bigger issue than a lot of people realize. And, you know, people will blame handheld supercomputers, and they'll blame the tidal wave of information. And, you know, look, people get interrupted all day long. Even if you decide to put yourself in a do not disturb zone, you get interrupted all day long. And sometimes those interruptions are important. And so, and sometimes it's just habit. Human beings are creatures of habit. The problem is that bad habits feel just as good as good habits. Sometimes they feel even better, right?
It's dangerous.
So, yeah, so people are like, you know, hey, that's just my style. That's how I do it. Well, what you're really saying is that's your habit.
Right.
It feels right. Well, of course it feels right. Habits feel right. And what's hard is that the only way to get from a suboptimal habit to a better habit is the disciplined practice of a proven technique, and it's uncomfortable until it becomes your new habit. So what I tell people of all ages, it's not just young people, right? Not just young people, it's just that the older, more experienced people are irritated by it, and the younger, less experienced people are like, what? You know, so, what's your problem? Hey, keep up, old man. So, but you know, but what I tell people is, you know, create blocks of uninterrupted time. Start with 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You know, if you want to get good at reading, read, right? You want to get good at concentrating, concentrate. Practice. All a skill is a technique that you practice over and over again until you get good at it. And keep practicing it. It'll become a habit. Once it's a habit, it'll feel good. So, you know, I know that if you set aside 2 hours of uninterrupted time, you might go bananas, right? But if you set up 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you can start to build that muscle of focus, you know, you know, meditation, yoga, karate. Karate's just yoga with punches and kicks, you know.
I love yoga.
I practice yoga.
Yeah.
I actually teach it.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, look, yoga is, you know, anything that makes your mind and your body and your spirit stronger. is going to help you concentrate. Yoga is a great tool for developing concentration.
Right.
So is meditation, and those are both like this weird combination of, and it doesn't even have to be yoga or meditation. It could be anything that you find a place to just like let your mind go and focus. But it's this weird thing where you, after you finish yoga or meditation, you feel at peace with the world. Like you don't have these weird distractions. You're just sitting with your being, I would say. And I think everybody should practice some sort of meditation to be able to handle the outside stimuli. To be able to say, hey, you can throw stuff at me, it won't affect my concentration myself, which isn't easy to do. It's not easy at all. But again, like you said, practice.
Yeah.
It's a muscle. It's like doing push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely. I call that my little area of peace. I don't let anyone invade. Like that's my little box of peace. And I like how you said that a muscle is something that you have to practice. So is there like a routine that you have within your day that allows you to practice sharpening, or I guess you say buffing up these muscles, getting them stronger?
Yeah, I mean, look, so my schedule has been so different during the pandemic, because before the pandemic, for 25 years, I was traveling 100, 200 days a year. And that makes it so hard to have a routine. And your body wants a routine. Your body wants routine. So it required even that much more discipline, to be on the plane and would you like a drink? No. Yes, but no. Would you like some more nuts? Yes, but no. And then you get to the hotel room and it's like, I should work out. Yeah. I got to work out. But I'll tell you what, one of the great things about the last 13 months is I have not gotten on an airplane. So, I mean, on a good day, I work out 3 hours or and then walk the dog for an hour. And that is my meditation. I sing to the dog a lot, but I wouldn't sing to
You
a
sing?
human.
Are you good at, like, do you practice? Or you
Not
just
at
like,
all.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I sing to the dog in a way that you could sing to a baby or a
I love it.
dog, maybe a cat. You would not want to sing that the way I sing. You would not want to sing to an audience. But I'm just saying, like, I get lost in my own mind, when I'm working out, when I'm walking the dog. I'm always reading something. But my wife and I have been together for 35 years and we have no children. So, we have our routines, but the last year it's been actually amazing. It's the first time I've been able to have a routine since I started doing this.
And then how do you develop your routines? Do you just like plan out, hey, if this certain time I'm going to do this for the next like 30, 90 days? Or like, how do you go with that system?
Yeah, for me, it's just, the centerpiece of my day is, what do I have to do? Do I have a seminar? Do I have a client call? Do I have an interview? And then the next piece of my day is I want to make a big chunk of time for working out. And then I fit everything else into it. So, I have to work around other people's convenience because, if I were a monk, I wouldn't make a good monk. I was about to speculate if I were a monk, but I'd be a terrible monk. So
Really? I don't know. I feel like you would.
No, I really wouldn't.
You have the mindset of a monk, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
But yeah, so for me, it's like, what are my priorities? And I want to just try to make sure to make time for those priorities each day. Mm-hmm. And spending time with my wife, but that works out great because in terms of supply and demand, there's much more demand on my side than supply on hers because she's busy too.
Now, I want to get into one thing that has been like on my mind is when you're just like starting out, let's say a company or something, how do you build the best practices to manage that team? Whether it's like, let's go with a small one, like 1 to 5 people.
I mean, you've got to have a clear mission. Once you have a clear mission, you've got to set priorities day by day, week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter. Then you've got to figure out where does each person fit into those priorities. my view is somebody's got to be in charge. I think the self-managed team is kind of a fantasy. Give me 5 minutes with a self-managed team, I'll tell you who's in charge of that team. The only question is it the person who should be in charge? Yeah. And then, and then it's ongoing structured dialogue. So you gotta get every voice at the table, because more perspectives lead to better decisions. But you also have to have a process for making decisions and executing on those decisions. And so that's a super executive summary of what you need
managing.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah, because like my friend, actually one of our co-hosts, is starting his own business, so it's like interesting to understand like when do you start, how do you manage stuff? Like we can use Notion and stuff, but like how do you make sure that everybody uses it, everybody's actually like responding to the right messages, like checking the boxes off of like I completed this, I didn't. So I was just wondering if you had like best practice to help build that culture where people are like following through, doing their tasks, making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, accountability is a process, not a slogan. You can't rely on technology. It's communication. That means you spell out expectations every step of the way. You follow up, you follow up, you follow up. And the reason they call it accountability is because people need to be comfortable giving an account to each other of what they've done and what they're going to do next. And, look, so if you're the boss, then you have control over rewards and detriments, right? Mm-hmm. But accountability shouldn't require that. It should be as hard as, I look you in the eye and say, hey, I said I was going to do that. I did that. And here it is. Let me show you.
Now, what do you do if somebody doesn't like produce what they said they were going to do at the time frame that they gave?
Well, my advice is don't wait until the deadline, but talk to them, so maybe the first time you say, hey, it's going to be done Wednesday at midnight, right? Yep. Okay. Well, Wednesday at midnight, is it done? No. Well, something else came up. What do you mean something else came up? Well, so-and-so asked me to do such and such, and I couldn't get what I need from Mr. Blue. And, oh, okay. Well, do you think you could do it in the next 3 days? Sure. So Friday at midnight. Well, let's see, Thursday, Friday. Whatever. Saturday at midnight.
Yeah, Saturday.
Okay. So, but then you'd be really smart to check in the next day at noon, then check in the next day at 5, then check in the next day at noon, then check in the next day at 5. And then, and not say, is it done? But, you want to establish intermediate benchmarks along the way. So, gee, if you're going to be here Saturday night, where do you need to be by Friday? Where do you need to be by Thursday? Okay, well, where do you need to be by Thursday at noon? Now, you might think, well, what do you mean? Are we supposed to micromanage them? Well, no, because last time they said Wednesday at midnight, they didn't do it. So it's not micromanaging. It's just plain managing, right? And if they're like, hey, man, back off, don't look over my shoulder, then what you say is, oh, hey, good news. All you got to do is deliver on your commitments. I don't want to be looking over your shoulder. I got other things to do too.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Okay. And it's awesome that you were on the first author, I think, episode with Kara. That's how I found you.
Yeah. Kara's husband and I went to college together.
That's wild. What a small world.
Yeah.
The degrees of association.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of people know her now because I went to meet with this one guy yesterday on accident, and I was like, yeah, I know Dane Water, Kara, the CEO. I was like, yeah, we all apparently know her now.
Yeah, I remember when Hint first started.
Dang. Yeah, that's interesting how something like that has now become so big. I mean, it just takes hard work, dedication, and
following through
your vision. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you have to be undaunted.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was beautiful.
That was a beautiful segue. And segue into the art of being indispensable at work, which is the same as, being undaunted, being outstanding, being something that
they're close cousins.
Yeah, they're close cousins. So I want to dive into that, and like, what was the motivation behind writing that, and the biggest takeaways you've taken from that book, or that people can take from that?
Yeah. So what happened is, people started saying to me, what they're struggling with at work is that they're overwhelmed by overcommitment syndrome. and that as hard as they, try to be one of those indispensable go-to people, they're trying so hard to be a go-to person, but if you succeed, then everyone goes to you, and pretty soon you're drowning in other people's competing priorities and commitments.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a collaboration revolution underway in the workforce. Layers of management have been eliminated. Leaders are trying to increase productivity and quality and squeeze more and more out of every person. So everywhere I was going, people were saying to me, I'm inundated by requests from people, not just my boss, not just my team, but people sideways and diagonal. And I am forced to rely on people all over the organization chart who don't report to me or my boss, people I can't hold accountable. And, that started to be the issue that I was hearing over and over again. Remember, I said, when we interview people, I say, what's hard for you? And that began to bubble up as the number one issue. And so it seemed like a conundrum to me because, if you're operating in an environment where there's so much uncertainty, where so much is expected of everyone, and where lines of authority are not clear. And so they say, oh, well, then you have to build influence. Well, then if you have to build influence, it seems like, well, what do? Then you got to say yes to everyone and everything. Well, if you say yes to everyone and everything, pretty soon you find yourself overcommitted. Problems occur, delays occur, there's relationship friction, and pretty soon, you have siege mentality, you start to burn out, or at the very least, you start saying, no to everything because you're drowning in overcommitment. So that conundrum is what led me to look for solutions for, and that's what ended up in this book.
That's beautiful. And I'm curious. So when somebody is doing some great work or becoming the indispensable person at the job, how do they not let the higher ups overload them with work just because they're good at it, and let other people get away with not doing, the best that they can do and getting away with the minimum amount of work?
Yeah, well, look, so, all you can control is you. Mm-hmm. But remember, you are, you got to take care of yourself. You got to remember, overcommitment syndrome is the enemy. And so if you allow yourself to say yes, to please people in the moment, if you allow yourself to say yes, to resolve this current conversation, right, you end up over-promising, and you end up promising more than you can deliver. And you end up, all of a sudden, you're juggling competing priorities. If you're always juggling, you're gonna drop the ball. And what happens is delays occur, problems occur, and you end up being anything but indispensable. So What I tell people is, of course, you got to be great at what you do. Table stakes. Of course, you got to have a great attitude. Table stakes. Mm-hmm. Of course, you got to work hard. Table stakes. Okay, now what? Right? And that is, you got to be really good at managing yourself, and you got to be really good at managing other people. So the first person you got to manage every day is yourself. The second person you got to manage every day is your boss. The third person is anyone who reports to you, and then everyone else, right?
Pretty much.
And so, so what I tell people is, don't think of influence as a quid pro quo. Well, I better say yes, or else someone won't want to help me. What you got to think of influence as the long game of reputation. Who are you? How do you show up? Yes is where all the action is. Yes, you will be known for your yeses. But if all you have in your repertoire is no, then you'll have no yeses to be known by. But if you say yes and don't deliver, that will determine your reputation. So be really careful about how you say yes. Yes with a plan of action.
That's very important, because I feel everyone, even me, especially me, love to say yes. It just feels good. It's like, oh yeah, I got you. And then at the end of the day, you're like,
I got you?
Do I, or do I got myself? I got everyone else but me. So it's hard to say no. I don't know what it is, just pressure, I guess, not having priorities straight, or just trying not to look bad at people. But you're right.
So if you want to have power to say no,
Mhm.
right? It's not about sugarcoating your no. Oh, no, with a cherry on top. That's not it, right? It comes from how you show up and how you conduct yourself. I'm here to add value. I'm here to serve, but I can't do everything for everybody, right? So if you become known as somebody who really listens when somebody has a need, really listens when somebody has a request, really pay attention, take notes, ask questions, treat people's needs with respect, and then make really good decisions. Like, that's not something I can do, so I'm going to let you down, right? So I'm not going to say yes. Maybe I'll say I could do that in 3 weeks, right? Or, gee, I'm not allowed to do that. Actually, you're not allowed to do that either. We shouldn't be doing that, right?
Yeah. Being
Or,
self-aware.
okay, I could do that, but that's not my specialty. It would take me a while to learn that. So let me be straight up on that. I'm not going to pretend, right? Or, oh, now you're asking me for something that is my specialty. I can do that very well, very fast. I know exactly what to do, how to do it. Now, right? That's yes with a plan, right? So if you become known as somebody who respects other people's needs, tunes into other people's requests, and then make really good decisions about yes and no. And when you say yes, you deliver. When you say no, people think, gee, no is probably the right answer.
Yeah.
And if you conduct yourself that way, the chances are there are going to be other people in the organization or outside the organization with whom you have good working relationships that you can say, oh, that's not for me, but let me go. I bet if you talk to Mr. Blue can help you with that, right?
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great advice. I'm going to definitely take that and run with it. So I wanted to ask, how do you become like an effective leader, like a manager, more of a leader than a boss, someone who barks orders, but someone who actually like listens to people and understands their needs? Like, how does someone become that?
Well, you answer your own question that listening is an important piece of the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle. And I'm not somebody who believes that, most leaders need to light the fire in someone else's belly, right?
Okay.
I think that's a tall order.
Yeah, it is.
And, some
would
people
argue
have
with
it,
it.
some people don't, right?
Mhm.
Like if you can light the fire in someone else's belly, God bless you. That is a gift from God, right? I don't know if you can learn that. So seek to understand their deep inner motivations. Really? Is that any of your business? And are you qualified to figure that out? I think in most cases, what people need from a leader is somebody who takes the time to make sure they have the resources they need, that they understand the broad performance parameters, that you spell out expectations in detail, that you follow up, that you help them troubleshoot, problem solve, that you tune in, you know what they're doing, you know how they're doing it, so that if you have a boss who knows who you are, knows what you're doing, it tells you you're important and your work is important. Somebody who is strong before things go wrong. They provide guidance and direction and support and coaching. Now, look, if you happen to have the ability to light the fire in someone else's belly, that's a gift. But what most people need from a leader is somebody who's consistent, patient, thorough, helps them avoid unnecessary problems, go in the right direction.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. That's it. It's just making sure that they have the foundations to do what they need to do and not get overwhelmed, not get burnt out, not feel like they don't have the tools and stuff. It's really it. And just they want someone who understands their role. I think another thing that makes a leader ineffective is when they don't really know what the person they're overseeing is like, what their employees doing. It's like, hey, I need you to program this, but I don't know anything about programs, so I need you to do it in like 2 days. And they're like, I need a week. if you wouldn't, like, if the leader would understand that, they would understand, like, okay, you need time to do this. I don't need to, like, micromanage you the whole time. Like, stuff like that's where I think leaders fail, in my experience, is like just not understanding what the person needs to actually do to get the product they want.
I think you're right. And look, maybe I'm not the expert on what you do. So then how can I be a leader? I've got to ask good questions. I got to listen. I got to pay attention. I got to look at what other people who are doing similar work are doing. If you tell me, it's like if you go to the doctor and you say, hey, doc, where are you going to cut? And they're like, I'm going to cut right here, and the incision is going to be about this big, and you're going to be in the hospital for 2 days. Well, if you wake up and the incision's over on your shoulder, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
right?
You're like, wait a minute.
Do they do what they said they're going to do? I don't know how to perform surgery, but I know you said you were going to cut here, and I got an incision over here.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think it went right.
So we're getting near the end, but I do want to ask one question. Is there a moment where you've had like a favorite failure that actually led you to more success? I know we had the one before with the speaking, but do you have another one where you kind of?
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's pretty. That's my favorite. Do you have any other like dark times where you like didn't know that the light was there and then got through it?
Look, there's nothing brave about doing things you're not afraid of. So, I always say I'm a fraidy cat, but, I'm brave because I do stuff anyway. And, I hate being away from home, but a lot of my job is traveling. I'll tell you something, nothing like being a fighter, the thing you learn being a fighter, and I've done martial arts since I was 7, I'm 54 now. So I've been doing that for a long time.
Wow.
And one of the things you learn from being a fighter is if you get hit, it's more important to be able to take a punch, because you're going to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to learn how to take a punch and keep fighting.
I love it. It's like that Rocky one. It doesn't
Absolutely.
matter how hard you get hit, as hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Exactly.
Malachi, you have anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I don't. I just want to thank you for your time, Bruce. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Well, thank you. It warms my heart to be invited, and it's an honor and a privilege to be on with both of you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. And so we do this funny thing at the end where just picture we're like on a sofa flying through space, and then there's going to be a billboard that the whole galaxy can see. What would be like your one like motto on that billboard?
Well, what I've been saying to people lately is practice being the person you're trying to become.
I love that. Just build a habit.
And you'll become it. Absolutely.
Yeah, or
Awesome.
you'll get closer and closer,
Yeah, to becoming it. Absolutely. Sounds like words Neville Carter said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you for coming on, and this has been a pleasure. And to end it off, we're just going to hand the mic to you if you want to do any last-minute shout-outs, last-minute quotes, whatever you want to throw in and plug in. And thanks for coming on, and the mic's all yours.
Yeah, thank you so much to both of you, and I'm easy to find. I'm at RainmakerThinking.com.
Welcome back to Earth. I hope you've enjoyed your journey.